Hey guys, tonight we drift way backward into the dry, shimmering cradle of the ancient world. You're barefoot on warm sand. The early morning sun, casting honey-colored rays across the slow curve of the Nile, it smells faintly of water lilies and goat. Somewhere nearby, a donkey complains. You rub your eyes and glance across a stone village, still tucked under woven palm roofs. Life here begins early and ends dusty. But before we explore the tooth-cleaning habits of the ancients, here's your quick reality check. If you lived in prehistoric Egypt, you probably wouldn't survive your own molars. Between sandstorms, sugarless bread made of rocks, and zero access to floss, your teeth would wear down faster than your sandals. No electric toothbrushes, no bubblegum rinse, and spoiler alert, yes, they really used burnt bread. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're retuning in from and what time it is. I am always curious about sleepy listeners across the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up in a reed hut on the edge of the Nile, roughly 6,000 years ago. The sun isn't up yet, but the air is already warm. You stretch, stepping outside, your feet crunching softly on the packed earth. Chickens squawk lazily. A few palm trees shiver in the faint breeze. Across the river, the hills of the desert glow faintly orange. This is Lower Egypt, where water is life, and the Nile gives, takes, and brushes its muddy fingers over every part of daily life. From farming to funerals, from boats to bread, including unbelievably your dental routine. Your neighbor, an elderly woman with a laugh like gravel, is already up, squatting by a fire. She's pounding something in a stone bowl. It smells a bit like burning flour and crushed herbs. For the teeth, she says without looking up. It's your first hint that here, dental care isn't new. It's already something the ancients do automatically, the way you scroll your phone in bed. The Nile people have known for generations that the mouth must be kept clean, not just for comfort, but for health, magic, and social survival. Across the centuries, historians have debated whether oral care developed out of necessity, ritual, or sheer pragmatism. The truth is probably a bit of all three. You get a toothache in the ancient world, and your options are ... minimal. Maybe a poultice, maybe a priest with incense. Maybe someone just wiggles it out with a sharp stick. But if you've ever heard someone say ancient people didn't care about hygiene, you can now picture them brushing their teeth with burnt barley paste and telling the gods they doing their best. Because here in Egypt, cleanliness is sacred. And yes, that includes your breath. You wander through the village as the light grows. A boy with kohl-rimmed eyes chases a skinny cat. Fishmonger yawns and opens his stall. You pause to watch a young woman scraping her tongue with what looks suspiciously like a bent twig. It's smooth from use, and she moves it with practiced grace. She rinses with a splash from a clay jug and spits expertly into the dust. The taste, she tells you, is a blend of mint and vinegar. Keeps the demons out, she grins. Even now, historians argue whether early hygiene practices were more medicinal or magical. Were these routines driven by oral health? Or fear of breath demons? Possibly both. The Egyptians were famously clean freaks, bathing multiple times a day and shaving their heads to avoid lice. Dental care followed suit. The mouth, after all, was a sacred orifice. Priests couldn't enter temples without purification rituals that included oral cleansing. And nothing ruins a morning prayer like garlic breath. You pass a limestone basin used for washing. A mother gently scrubs her daughter's teeth with what looks like a frayed stick dipped in oil. The little girl giggles, tasting honey and salt. The stick, miswak taken from a tree branch, chewed soft at one end. It's still used in parts of the world today. As the sun rises, the village begins to buzz. You catch snippets of morning rituals. Some people chew on cloves, others rinse with beer. You spot a boy trying to crush a lump of natron salt between two stones, his makeshift toothpaste base. It's gritty and effective, if not exactly minty fresh. Nearby, a potter explains that her grandmother taught her to mix ash, crushed eggshells, and burnt bread into a paste. The blacker the bread, she says, the cleaner the teeth. You laugh, but only a little. This place is a mix of logic and lore, of scrubbing and spells. The line between hygiene and holiness is porous, and if it means cleaner teeth, no one's complaining. Before long, someone offers you a small ceramic pot. Inside is a gray, powdery mixture. Try it, they urge. You dab your finger in and rub a bit onto your teeth. It tastes like campfire and herbs. It's chalky, a bit spicy, but oddly not terrible. And that's where our long, sleepy saga truly begins. The sun is higher now, casting long shadows from date palms and mud brick walls, but the village rhythm never hurries. You stroll lazily past a goat tethered to a fig tree and find yourself drawn to the quiet hum of a scribe's courtyard. It's shaded by a canopy of woven reeds, a gentle trickle of water running through a small irrigation channel near be just enough sound to soothe, not distract. Inside, the scribe sits cross-legged, surrounded by rolled-up papyri and flat pieces of limestone called estrica. His fingers are stained with ink, his concentration absolute. But what catches your eye isn't the writing, it's the curious arrangement of herbs, powders, and tiny clay pots at his side. This is where your story deepens, the connection between knowledge, ritual, and what happens inside your mouth. You sit quietly as the scribe continues his work, brush in hand. He's not just copying sacred texts. He's also recording recipes, some for bread, some for poultices, and a few that deal with matters of the teeth. Egyptians didn't make sharp distinctions between medical care and religious practice. If your gums bled, you might consult a healer, a priest, or a neighbor with a suspiciously enthusiastic opinion on pomegranate juice. The scribe pauses to sip something thick and dark from a small cup. He notices your interest in the nearby powders. For teeth, he says casually, pointing to a jar labeled with a symbol that looks like a reed in a mouth. You chew, then spit. He grins white teeth. Maybe from practice, maybe from privilege. Papyrus records from around 1500 BCE list dental remedies among their lines. Like awkward love letters to molars, there are recipes that include incense, dried iris, flowers, and beer scum. One particularly poetic suggestion reads, "Mix green lead with honey and apply with a twig in silence." Silence perhaps was part of the magic, or the suffering. Lean closer. One of the astraca details a combination of ground barley, sea salt, crushed mint leaves, and yes, burnt bread. Always with the burnt bread. Why do you burn it, you ask? The scribe shrugs. To chase out the worms, you blink worms. He nods with confidence. Tooth pain is from worms in the teeth. This was not a metaphor. For centuries, many cultures believed that toothaches were caused by tiny worms burrowing inside the tooth. They supposedly wriggled when you ate sweet things and caused agony when disturbed. No microscope required. Just pain and the desperate need for answers. Modern scholars still argue whether this belief originated in Mesopotamia or Egypt. Some think it spread like bad breath quickly and with persistence. Others argue it developed independently across many early cultures, which frankly makes it all the more impressive and confusing. Back in the courtyard, a small boy runs in and hands the scribe a bundle of dried herbs. "For father," he says solemnly. "His tooth again." The scribe nods. He reaches for a pinch of what looks like natrinon alkaline salt, used for everything from preserving bodies to polishing teeth, and mixes it into a little ceramic dish, sprinkles in ground pepper, drips a bit of vinegar, and adds a few flakes of crushed acacia bark. He'll gargle this, he tells you, then chew fennel. Maybe the gods will listen. You offer a sympathetic smile. Maybe they will. Even in these quiet moments, you realize how complex ancient Egyptian thinking was. The same person who prepared sacred incantations could also recommend a root to chew or a poultice for your jaw. The lines between science, religion, and superstition were as porous as an overbaked loaf of barley bread. You glance at one scroll, partially unrolled, showing a mouth-shaped glyph next to stars and water symbols. You don't need to read ancient Egyptian to know. Mouths were sacred. The act of speaking, the power of names, the breath used to summon a god all flowed through this one part of the body. Keeping it clean wasn't just polite, it was divine maintenance. Outside, a priest passes by on his way to the temple, shaved bald, dressed in crisp linen, and carries a slender wooden staff. The scribe bows slightly, cleanses 4 times a day, he whispers. Even his tongue. You're tempted to ask what happens if he forgets. But the answer's probably somewhere between divine punishment and very stern social side-eye. You rise, stretching in the sun. The scribe returns to his writing, scratching out a line and starting again. Perhaps he's recording a new mixture. Maybe he's penning a complaint about his cousin's breath. As you step back onto the path, the breeze brings with it the mingled scents of ash, herbs, and papyrus glue. Strange how something as ordinary as dental hygiene could feel so sacred here. It's not just about having a nice smile. It's about honoring your body as a vessel of speech, prayer, and presence. You pass a group of children practicing writing in the dirt with sticks. One draws a tooth, another adds a worm. They laugh. You smile, letting your tongue press gently against the backs of your own teeth. Somewhere in that delicate, half-remembered pressure lies the full, odd, minty weight of history. You wander further from the Nile, away from the bustle of the waking village, as the sun stretches its golden fingers across the dry, cracked earth. The air smells faintly of dust and reeds. Somewhere behind you, a goat bleats in protest, possibly at the concept of early morning. As you shuffle along the riverbank path, a thought nags at you. Who first decided that your mouth, yes, your very breath needed attention in the first place? It wasn't always this way. There was a time before toothbrushes, before powders and pastes, before rituals. And it turns out your teeth have been through quite a lot. You duck beneath a woven reed archway and enter a small mud brick home. A man is hunched over a collection of bones, sorting through them like someone choosing fruit at a market. These are old, he mutters, very old. He's an early healer, something between a dentist, a priest, and a very tired uncle. He gestures for you to sit, and you do. He places his skull in your lap. Don't worry, it's clean, mostly. You look down and see worn molars flattened like pebbles. No cavities, just erosion like. Someone has been chewing sandpaper for 30 years, which, surprisingly, isn't far off. The earliest Egyptians ate bread made from barley or emmer wheat, both of which were ground by hand between two stones. And well, stone flakes happen. You chew the bread, you chew a bit of the grinding stone. Crunch, crunch, repeat for life. This is how the first smiles in Egypt probably looked, full of teeth that had been filed down not by tools, but by diet. Dental attrition, the scholars call it. And it was relentless. Even in relatively young skeletons, molars were often worn nearly flat. There are even cases where the roots started to poke through the gum line, which, needless to say, is not ideal for date night. You run a finger over the skull's jawbone, noting the tight wear pattern. Still argue over the causes, the man says, sipping from a clay cup. Some say it's just the bread. Others say they ground herbs with grit on purpose. To clean, he shrugs. Maybe both. Historians still debate whether the abrasive nature of early food was accidental or intentional. Did they realize that gritty additives helped scrub teeth? Or did they just resign themselves to early dental doom? Either way, the result was clear. People started looking for ways to soothe their aching mouths. Outside, the sky turns bright and clear. You follow a group of children to the village edge, where a woman demonstrates how to chew on aromatic sticks. Not just any stick, these are twigs from trees, like Salvadora persica, still used today in parts of the world. It's soft, fibrous, and slightly bitter, with natural antibacterial properties. Copy the children, biting gently until the end phrase. Then you drag the fibers across your teeth. It's oddly satisfying. There's no minty aftertaste, but your mouth feels cleaner. Even the stick seems pleased. Further down the lane, another elder mixes a different kind of remedy, a strange blend of myrrh, honey, and powdered ox hooves. To keep the teeth white, she insists, though you're not sure the ox ever agreed to that use. She offers you a dab. You hesitate. You try it anyway. You regret it almost immediately. Yet, there's something oddly comforting about the routine. People chew sticks, rinse with vinegar, spit like pros. It's dental care meets social hour. You sit on a sun-warmed step and watch a group of neighbors compare the freshness of their breath the way modern folks might compare colognes. One woman claims her mint leaves were kissed by Hathor herself. Another accuses her of using swamp mint. Gasps all around. That's when the local gossip, a wiry man with 3 teeth and the voice of a whispering breeze, leans close and says, "You know, some say teeth carry memory. Lose one, forget your mother's name, you raise an eyebrow. Others say if you die with dirty teeth, your soul can't speak clearly in the afterlife." And just like that, Your plaque becomes a spiritual liability. You lie back in the warm sand and let your thoughts drift. You think of the first smiles, tight-lipped to hide erosion, or wide to show off well-cared-for teeth. You think of the absurdity and ingenuity. Sticks, stones, ashes, and 1,000 ways to scrub, swish, and spit. When you realize these people weren't primitive. They were determined. Their breath might have smelled like burnt barley and goat milk, but by the gods, they tried. A warm breeze passes over your face. A child giggles nearby, playing with a reed flute. Somewhere, someone is grinding something for tomorrow's brushing powder. And the Nile flows on, eternal, indifferent, and full of stories like this one. You close your eyes for a moment and wonder, if you lost your toothbrush today, would you start over with burnt bread? You wander from the scribes' shaded courtyard, down a well-trodden path edged with broken potsherds and scattered date pits. Overhead, linen flaps on a line, dancing in the warm breeze. You pass a woman kneeling near a basin, scrubbing fabric with a chunk of natron. She pauses long enough to smile and offer you a sip from a clay cup. It's barely sweetened barley water, gritty on the tongue, but surprisingly refreshing. As you drink, you notice her teeth yellowed, but surprisingly whole. No fashionable burnishing or exotic pastes, just what nature gave her, plus a daily rinse and a prayer or two. She doesn't seem particularly interested in mint or burnt offerings. And yet, she has something better. Routine. You stroll further into the outskirts, where the homes are fewer, and the air smells less like smoke and more like fresh earth. Here, in this quieter part of the village, you find something rare: an old man reclining under a sycamore tree, pressing a damp cloth to his jaw and cursing softly under his breath. A neighbor notices and walks over with a mixture in a small reed basket. You squat nearby, watching as the paste is applied with the blunt end of a stick. It smells like garlic and tree resin. The old man grimaces, but within minutes, his jaw slackens and his shoulders drop in relief. It's not magic, it's willow bark, one of the oldest natural painkillers known to history, and, as it happens, a relative of aspirin. Historians still debate whether the Egyptians fully understood the chemical properties of willow bark, or simply relied on empirical trial and error. Either way, the result is the same. Less jaw-clutching, more napping in shade. You ask the neighbor how she knows this remedy. She grins. My grandmother swore by it, said even the Pharaoh's breath stank. But he never complained of tooth pain after this. You offer a skeptical smile. Oh yes, she says. And if that didn't work, there was always the crocodile dung. You freeze. The what now? Crocodile dung. Dried, burnt, mixed with salt. Clears the spirits, they say. You blink slowly, in the mouth near it. Around it, depends who you ask. You wisely decide not to ask further. And here's the thing: while crocodile dung might not make it into your modern dental routine, it did make its way into many beauty and health regimens in ancient Egypt. Everything from birth control to perfume bases. The dung had staying power, metaphorically, hopefully. Further up the path, you enter a small open-air market. Woven baskets overflow with herbs: marjoram, cinnamon, myrrh, and something that smells like spicy riverbank. A man waves you over and offers a sample of his specialty, a chewable pellet made of frankincense resin, charcoal, and powdered limestone. To whiten teeth and calm the breath, he boasts. You try it. It tastes like the inside of a spice jar that's also been used as a footlocker, but the aftertaste is oddly cooling. Somewhere between licorice and river rock, that's when he pulls out the real showstopper, a green paste, sticky and potent smelling. Bread crusts, charred, crushed with rock salt and mint oil. Burnt bread again. People say it draws the heat out of the gums, he says, handing you a sample the size of a fingernail. Scribes use it, priests too. You look at the paste, hesitate, then gently dab it onto a finger and rub it across your molars. It tingles slightly. It's not minty, not unpleasant, mostly earthy, kind of deep toasted flavor that makes your mouth feel like it's been in a desert ceremony. The truth is, Egyptians were relentless tinkerers when it came to personal care. They weren't satisfied with one method. They layered. Chew sticks, rinses, pastes, prayers, and gossip, usually all before breakfast. Dental routines were deeply individual, passed down like secret recipes. At a nearby stall, two women argue over whether goat milk or sour beer makes a better mouth rinse. You lean in. Beer curdles the rot, one insists. Goat milk softens the breath, counters the other. A third chimes in. Everyone knows you rinse with both and finish with lemon. This apparently settles it. You feel like you've just witnessed the culinary Olympics of oral care. And maybe that's the point. For the Egyptians, the line between medicine and meal was blurred. Food was care. Drink was therapy. Even what you smeared on your gums could be part of your daily nourishment. No sterile, minty tubes, here just pungent, handmade rituals and the occasional divine assist. As you step away from the market, chewing thoughtfully on a clove, you think again about how people used to treat their teeth not as throwaway tools, but as living parts of the soul. One merchant even told you the tongue was the bridge between this world and the next. That if your tongue wasn't clean, your prayers got stuck somewhere between the throat and the stars. So when they cleaned their mouths, they weren't just chasing plaque, they were clearing the runway. And you're just beginning to understand the reverence in that. You follow a trail of sandal prints pressed into soft dust, weaving through golden reeds and drifting toward the Nile's edge. The river glints under the morning sun, lazy and vast, its water carrying secrets whispered upstream. Here, near the banks, a group of young boys laugh as they scrub their teeth with frayed twigs natural toothbrushes cut from the Salvadora persica plant, known today as the toothbrush tree. They chew until the end frays like a paintbrush, then scrub along their gums with practiced rhythmic strokes. One boy winks and flicks a bit of twig pulp toward his friend, who retaliates by flicking a blob of river mud back. Tooth care and mischief, a timeless pairing. The air smells of silt and warm reeds. You settle on a flat stone and watch the ritual unfold, casual, communal, somehow sacred. These chewing sticks are more than village tricks. They've been used for thousands of years across regions as distant as Egypt, India, and Arabia. Modern scientists even agree the bark contains natural antiseptics and fluoride compounds. It turns out, ancient children had better dental tools than most modern snackers, armed with bubble gum and wishful thinking. One boy offers you his spare stick. You chew cautiously. It's bitter at first, but it softens quickly, like damp cinnamon bark. The scraping sound is oddly satisfying. You imagine thousands of Egyptians doing the same thing every day, mouths busy before breakfast. A woman nearby rinses a comb in river water, then leans over a basket of dried herbs and small linen sachets. She's a healer of sorts, part midwife, part pharmacist, part neighborhood gossip archive. You greet her with a polite nod and she waves you closer. She holds up a pouch of greenish powder. For mouth wounds, she says simply, dried lotus root and crushed barley. Stops bleeding. Sweetens breath, too, if you're lucky. You glance at another sachet tied with a red cord. That one, for husbands who won't stop snoring. But that's another story. She pulls out a flat piece of papyrus covered in careful hieratic script, less formal than hieroglyphs, but no less sacred. She points to a line and explains it, a remedy from a temple record. Ground malachite, myrrh, salt, and a paste made from wait for it burnt bread again. It's everywhere, this charred carb. You burn it until it blackens, she says, miming the motion. Not too much, or it loses strength, just until the smell turns sweet. Historians still debate whether this combination was chosen for its medicinal properties or because bread was simply always available. Some believe the charring process sterilized the material, creating a kind of ancient charcoal, capable of absorbing odors and bacteria. Others argue it may have held symbolic significance. Bread turned into ash, then remade into healing. A cycle, like the Nile itself. You're redistracted by a buzzing insect and notice something odd. A small wax tablet hanging from the healer-esque basket, inscribed with faint symbols and specks of powder clinging to it. What's this, you ask? She smiles, a spell for tooth pain. You rub the tablet against the sore place, then speak the words. Do they work? Sometimes, she says. But the rubbing helps more than the words. There it is again, that dance between faith and function. Whether it's willow bark, burnt bread, or a whispered charm. The Egyptians always seemed to treat the body with both practicality and poetry. You walk slowly along the river now, passing boatmen, unloading baskets of onions, dried fish, and surprise more herbs. A jar topples over, spilling powdered natron onto the bank. One man curses, then scoops it back into the jar with surprising care. It's not just for embalming, you learn. Natron had 1,000 household use of soap, deodorant, tooth powder, even laundry booster. Egyptians basically invented the multi-purpose cleaner and then used it in their mouths. You find this somehow comforting and slightly terrifying. A toothless old woman near the shore dips her fingers into a bowl of vinegar and salt, then gently presses it to her gums. Keeps the mouth brave, she mutters. You wonder if she means brave as in clean, or brave as in tolerating whatever people used to call dentistry. Because dentistry, as a concept, didn't really exist here, not in the surgical sense. There were no drills, no x-rays, no reclining chairs with bibs, just relentless daily care, trial and error remedies, and hope. If things got really bad, you probably turned to a temple or prayed to Circuit, goddess of healing bites and stings, hoping she'd also take mercy on your molars. Still remains of ancient Egyptian skulls show surprisingly sophisticated work holes where infected teeth were drained. Signs of gum surgery, and even rudimentary fillings made from resin or linen soaked in honey. Yes, honey, nature's antiseptic sweetener. Not just for offerings and desserts, but also for patching dental wounds. You picture some poor soul lying still while a priest inserts a honey-soaked plug into an angry molar and murmurs blessings. You shudder sympathetically. And yet it worked. Sometimes. That combination of antiseptic properties, sealing action, and sheer divine optimism had its moments. By now, the sun is dipping lower, casting gold over the water. You pass a fisherman, whistling tunelessly as he guts a carp. He glances at you and grins wide, several teeth missing, but not for lack of trying. He nods toward the river. You drink it, it kills you. You rinse with it, you live longer. He's not entirely wrong. Back in the village, the boys from earlier have finished their morning scrubbing and are now chasing each other with the chewed-off ends of their sticks, laughing so hard they forget to be self-conscious. You smile, biting gently on your own frayed twig. The taste is fading now, but the memory lingers bitter, earthy, somehow pure. There's something profoundly human about it all. This insistence on tending to our bodies, even in the simplest ways. Rubbing twigs on teeth, burning bread into medicine, chewing bark and spitting out worms that were never really there. You run your tongue along your teeth and feel the smallest change in new awareness, maybe, or just a very faint taste of mint mixed with Nile dust. You wake, or maybe you never quite slept inside. A dimly lit workshop where the air smells of ink, dem linen, and crushed herbs. A fan stirs lazily in the corner, woven from reeds and moved by a small boy too bored to be enthusiastic about airflow. Your eyes adjust to the soft glow of oil lamps. And there, bent over a thick slab of alabaster, is the village scribe. He's older than most of the walls around here, with long fingers stained by soot and malachite, and a look in his eyes like he's seen more teeth than scrolls this week. He gestures for you to sit and pushes forward a worn tablet covered in delicate hieroglyphs. Here, he says with the casual confidence of someone who absolutely knows what S inside a crocodile S mouth. The mouth spells. You blink. Spells, you ask. Protective ones, he explains. For the afterlife. Your heart is judged, yes, but your mouth has to work to speak your truth, so we have to preserve it. Carefully. And here begins your strange, dreamy descent into what might be the earliest known version of dental insurance. In the Book of the Dead, a collection of rituals and recitations intended to help the soul navigate the underworld. Multiple chapters are devoted not to bravery or valor, but to the mouth. There are spells to open it, spells to keep it moist, spells to make sure it doesn't rot before the final judgment. One of the most iconic is the opening of the mouth ceremony, where priests would tap a sacred toulophone shaped like an adze against the lips of a mummy, symbolically restoring the ability to breathe, speak, and eat in the afterlife. No one wants to arrive in the next world with their jaw locked shut. Historians still debate whether this ritual was ever performed on the living, perhaps as a symbolic healing rite for those suffering from infection or pain. Some fringe scholars argue it could have been an ancient therapeutic intervention, but most consider it purely ceremonial, yet undeniably mouth-focused. The scribe grins, revealing a suspiciously pristine set of teeth. You think we only worshipped cats and sun gods? He hands you a second tablet a bit more tattered and on it is a short verse. hone, really, addressed to one's own mouth. Do not betray me in the hall of truth. Do not stammer before the gods. Stay strong, stay sweet, stay whole. You glance up. Stay sweet, he winks, honey. We used it on everything. That tracks. Next to the scribe is a small shelf of labeled jars. One contains powdered carob, another myrrh resin, and a third, intriguingly, is marked only with a symbol resembling a loaf of bread on fire. Burnt bread strikes again. The scribe taps the jar. Crushed finely, mixed with red ochre, sometimes cumin, used for the rite of mouth cooling. You paint it along the gums, especially after arguments. You stifle a laugh. That's oddly specific. Ever argued with a noblewoman? You'll wish you had mouth cooling. The workshop, like everything else in this world, is part science, part faith, part social survival. You realize that Egyptians didn't just fear tooth pain, they prepared for it like a spiritual threat. Because in their cosmology, everything the body did in life, chewing, speaking, even kissing, would need to function just as well in eternity. You peek inside a drawer and find a strange object. A gold-plated replica of a molar, maybe 2 centimeters across, with faint decorative etching. Amulet, the scribe explains. Worn by priests, protects against bad breath. That's a thing, you ask? Oh, the worst thing, he says solemnly. Breath that offends the gods, you're done. You tuck that into your mental notebook. The door creaks as another figure steps into the room, a young woman in ceremonial linen, clearly a temple acolyte. She's holding a tiny alabaster bowl, its contents dark and sticky. Mouth paint, she says, offering it to the scribe. He dips a slender reed stick in, swirls, and daubs a bit on the back of his hand. Too much cassia, he murmurs. You lean closer and catch the scent, warm, spicy, almost like cinnamon blended with pine. It was once believed to restore harmony to the voice and cleanse unspoken thoughts. Some say singers wore it before performances, others before trials. And of course, it could double as a mouth-freshening salve. Dual purpose, elegance, Egypt's specialty. In a far corner, half hidden beneath scrolls, you notice a clay model of a head with exaggerated features. The mouth is open, tongue protruding, teeth bared awkwardly. It's not a toy, it's a training model. Apprentice priests practiced rituals on it, reciting prayers as they touched each tooth with stylized instruments carved from ivory or bronze. Some scholars believe these were part of educational rites, learning how to anoint the mouth correctly, how to recognize spiritual blockages from foul speech or neglect. And always the idea lingered. The mouth must be clean to speak the truth, to honor Manat, goddess of balance and order. You sit silently for a while, letting the stillness settle around you. The scribe hums a tune older than most cities you've visited. The fan sways back and forth. Outside, someone calls for water, and a donkey brays like it swallowed a trumpet. And then the scribe speaks, barely above a whisper. The tongue remembers. More than the heart, more than the feet. It remembers your promises, your failures, your laughter. You nod slowly, not sure if you're entirely awake. In Egypt, the mouth was not just a tool for eating or surviving. It was a map, a compass, a sacred gate. And like all sacred things, it had to be tended with bread and spells and bark and nonsense and belief. So you rise, mouth tingling from the bitter powder of some ancient blend, and head toward the temple gardens where soft chanting floats on the breeze. Maybe, just maybe, your mouth is a little sweeter now. You move slowly now, as if your sandals are made of papyrus in dreams, padding softly across the tiled floor of a temple courtyard. The air is perfumed with blue lotus and frankincense. A row of palm trees sways gently overhead, their shadows stretching long across the ground like friendly ghosts. Nearby, a priest chants in a low, steady rhythm. You don't catch the words, but the cadence alone feels like a balm. Healing isn't always about herbs or spells. It can start with a voice, a repetition, a reminder. You're here to learn more about what happens when ancient Egyptian mouths fall apart, and how they stitch them back together. The temple walls are inscribed with scenes of medical rituals. Not gods, not battles, doctors, or at least what passed for them. Men with precise hands and a staggering tolerance for things that ooze. One mural shows a healer prying open a man's mouth with a tool that looks suspiciously like modern forceps. The patient is sitting upright, calm or resigned. Above them, hieroglyphs name a mixture of honey, powdered hematite, and the now familiar burnt bread. The caption loosely translates to, "For when the mouth is in rebellion." Honestly relatable. You approach a quiet alcove where an older priest is tending to a collection of copper instruments laid out on linen. There's a hook, a scraper, a spoon-shaped implement, and something that resembles a very tiny scythe. These, he explains without prompting, are for removing the rot. You raise an eyebrow. Tooth rot, he clarifies, smiling. Sometimes the root turns black. We scoop it. Slowly. You involuntarily clench your jaw. Historians still argue whether the ancient Egyptians truly practiced extractions. Some skeletal remains show teeth forcibly removed, but whether that was post-mortem preparation or ante-mortem agony is hard to say. What's clear is they had tools and enough motivation. In pain. A lot of pain. The priest picks up a copper hook and twirls it expertly. If we cannot remove the pain, he says, we confuse it. That's where incense comes in. Not just to make the place smell nice or appease gods, but as a kind of proto-anesthetic. Breathing in kefia fragrant blend of wine, honey, juniper berries, and resinoise, said to ease everything from headaches to heartbreaks. It also dulled the senses just enough to get through a dental ritual without too much screaming. You drift past a row of stone benches where patients used to sit, clutching linen bundles and prayer beads. One story you hear from a nearby attendant involves a noblewoman who insisted her molar ache was caused by a vengeful spirit who had once been her cat. The cure? Smear honey across her cheeks and recite a poem to bast it. Did it work? Probably not. But the sweetened cheek routine became a minor trend among the elite. As you walk deeper into the temple's healing wing, you stumble across a clay jar with dried residue clinging to the sides. A faded label, barely legible, reads, "For the silent mouth." A healer explains, it's a salve. Myrrh, crushed fig seeds, mint. We apply it to those who cannot speak from swelling. It soothes the tongue. You imagine someone with an abscess, unable to eat or cry out, and a gentle hand applying that cool, fragrant paste. Sometimes the treatment wasn't so much a cure as an act of care. There's something deeply moving about that. In one corner of the room, a boy no older than 10 is grinding herbs with a stone pestle. Looks up and says proudly, "This is for the Pharaoh's cook." He cannot taste unless his mouth is cool. You don't ask for details, but you do glance into the bowl. Cloves, peppermint, and a sliver of cooled beeswax. Kind of ancient breath freshener meets palate cleanser. Probably terrible on toast. Nearby, a display of skulls under glass reveals were patterns on ancient teeth. Some are polished almost flat, likely from years of chewing gritty bread baked with sand-blended flour. Others have neat holes, perhaps the result of deliberate draining. One has a resin filling still intact, smooth and shiny like amber. A tour guide murmurs to a small group. Egyptians were among the first to attempt dental fillings. Resins, linen, or gum were packed into cavities. We think beeswax was used to it sealed well and tasted ... acceptable. Imagine being the test subject for that discovery. In another chamber, walls are painted with scenes of women applying crushed dates and beer sediment to children. Escumza, teething remedy. It's part science, part lullaby. Maybe a mother's version of saying, "This will pass, little one." You lean against a column and close your eyes for a moment. The temple buzzes softly with chants, mortar grinding, sandal scuffs. No harsh lights, no waiting rooms with elevator music. Just this hum of purpose, ancient and oddly soothing. You begin to realize that in ancient Egypt, pain was never just pain. It was imbalance, disharmony. A warning from the body that something needed tending, not just removed or ignored. The body was sacred, yes, but the mouth. It was where magic and medicine met in a kiss of burnt bread and honey. One final detail catches your eye before you leave the temple: a papyrus scroll pinned under a stone weight. Its title? A remedy for the mouth that bites its own tongue. You chuckle softly. That's either metaphor or the world's first record of stress-induced chewing. You glance down at your reflection in a polished brass plate. Your teeth look surprisingly clean, your tongue a bit dry, and your brain swimming in ancient knowledge. You whisper the mouth poem under your breath, just to be safe. Stay strong, stay sweet, stay whole. And you walk back into the daylight. You leave the temple's healing wing behind and find yourself stepping into the bleached light of midday. The sun above is merciless, but you're used to it by now. You tug your linen tunic a little looser and follow the scent of something warm, spicy, and unmistakably edible. It's not quite lunchtime, but your ancient Egyptian hosts appear to disagree. You've stumbled into a food market near the Nile, a lively sprawl of baskets. Clay ovens, shouting vendors, and the occasional goat who clearly does not understand boundaries. As you wander between stalls, you notice something curious. There, tucked beside heaps of lentils and dried fish, are little bundles wrapped in palm leaves. You ask what they are. Toothcakes, the vendor replies with a grin. You squint. Sorry, what now? Date and bread paste. A little mint. Maybe some powdered lotus. Good for chewing. Good for the mouth. You take one cautiously. It's soft, warm from the sun, and tastes a bit like gritty banana bread with a herbal aftershock. Not terrible. Turns out food and oral care were never separate concepts here. They were twins, inseparable, and constantly trading places. The things you ate could both clean your mouth and ruin it, and the ancient Egyptians were well aware. They knew that fibrous vegetables, onions, garlic, celery helped scrape the teeth clean. They also knew that sticky date cakes and sweet beer could glue themselves to your molars like regrets. So they developed what might be the earliest concept of mouth-friendly menus, a dentist-approved diet 3,000 years early. Historians still argue whether these foods were consciously designed to improve dental health, or if people simply noticed their effects over time. But papyri from the 18th dynasty include lists of recommended meals for a calm mouth and a smooth tongue. That's probably more than your dentist ever gave you. You sit down on a stone bench near the river, watching a woman knead dough in a low, wide bowl. The flour is rough, full of husks and minerals from the grinding stone. It's the sand-infused flour that wore Egyptian teeth down like river stones. Skeletal remains from every class show extreme abrasion, even in teenagers. A peasant and a priest might not share much, but they did share the same sandpaper bread. You try a bite of the fresh loaf. It's dry, dense, and loud in your head, like biting into a brick that resents you. A passing fisherman chuckles. Careful, bread breaks more teeth than war. He's probably not wrong. And yet, people kept eating it. Because bread wasn't just food, it was currency, payment, offering, inheritance. One priestess will included his favorite grindstone in a recipe for soothing bread mixed with crushed coriander, honey, and fig seeds, meant to ease both belly and breath. Imagine priests hunched over sacred loaves, muttering about crust texture while preparing for spiritual rituals. One food seller offers you a bite of what she calls morning mouth mash. It's a mixture of softened lentils, cumin, and tamarind paste. Clears the throat, she explains. Good before prayers. And if you've had too much date wine, you file that away under ancient hangover cures. Nearby, a boy grins and shows you something wrapped in papyrustine. Chewy balls made of dried pomegranate peel and barley malt. My mother makes me eat one every day, he groans. Says it makes my breath smell like temple flowers. It doesn't, but the belief is what matters. These food-based oral traditions were rarely backed by science as we know it. They were rooted in taste, ritual, and inherited wisdom. The kind passed down between bites. Even chewing itself was therapeutic, not just for digestion, but for strengthening the mouth. People believed that chewing the right things, papyrus stalks, willow bark, licorice rootwood, firmed the gums and sharpened the tongue. There were even reports of dancers chewing aromatic leaves before performances to sweeten the voice and charm the judges. One older woman tells you of a bridal custom where new wives were given mouth oils, little clay pots of sesame or almond oil infused with herbs. To make the first kiss sweet, she says with a smirk, and to keep secrets safe inside. You don't ask what kind of secrets. Across the market, a man sets up a stall with a curious sign. Mouth readings. One silver ring. Intrigued, you step forward. He explains that by examining someone's mouth, its lines. Its dryness. The placement of their molars, he can tell what their spirit holds. You stick out your tongue. He peers at it thoughtfully, then nods. You chew too quickly. You bite your doubts. but your breath is honest. Thanks, I think. You walk away a little more aware of your teeth, and isn't that the point? In this world, food, medicine, and meaning are braided together. What goes into your mouth tells a story. What you chew becomes part of your breath, your speech, your soul. So you take another date cake. You chew a little slower this time. Somewhere behind you, someone laughs. The goats continue their slow revolt. And the Nile sparkles like it's been watching mouths chew and smile for 5,000 years. You're walking now along the shaded edge of the market, your feet tracing the worn grooves of centuries-old footpaths, half swept with sand and dry petals. The Nile hums nearby, its slow voice threading through the air like a lullaby. Your jaw still carries a faint memory of that crumbly bread, but you re-easing into a rhythm again like a camel that's found its pace after a rocky start. Ahead, you spot a limestone structure that doesn't quite match the rest of the market's chaos. Smaller than a temple, less busy than a shop. There's something precise about it, orderly, mathematical. The wooden sign hanging above the entrance is faded, but readable. House of Scribes and Speech. You're intrigued, frankly, a little suspicious of anything involving both paperwork and pronunciation. Inside, it's quiet, cool. Shelves stacked with scrolls line the walls. And in the center, a circle of low stools surrounds a raised lectern. A young woman looks up from her writing, ink brush poised. "You're here for the tongue maps?" she asks. "Sure. Why not?" She gestures you over and unfurls a papyrus scroll showing a diagram of the mouth knot, quite anatomically correct but detailed in its own way. The tongue is divided into sections, each labeled with hieroglyphs. Taste of bitter lies, voice of father's line, gate of swallowing wisdom. You blink. "This is speech medicine," she explains, as if that clears everything up. "We believe the mouth holds memory. Some problems are not the teeth or tongue, but the story trapped inside." You nod slowly, partly because it sounds poetic, and partly because you have no idea how to disagree. She continues, "If someone speaks too sharply, they are given honey paste. If they stutter, we soak their words in warm beer. If they speak too much," she smiles, "we ask them to chew dry papyrus." That one earns a chuckle. Historians still argue whether these practices were purely symbolic or had some physical effect. Some scrolls suggest herbs like fenugreek and licorice were used for their mucilaginous texture, ease sore throats or coat irritated gums. Others read more like therapy sessions wrapped in metaphor. A scribe across the room beckons you. He holds out a small wooden box. Inside are chips of carob wood, shards of cinnamon bark, and what looks like dried crocodile tongue. It's fake, he assures you, mostly resin and ash, but it helps students imagine the weight of their own words. You pick one up, it smells like campfire and ambition. The scribes, it turns out, were trained not just in writing but in enunciation. To master the delicate art of reading aloud prayers, tax records, or royal decrees, one needed a steady mouth. Mispronouncing the name of a god, for example, could spell spiritual disaster, or just a lot of awkward silence. So they practiced mouth control. Exercises involving tongue twisters, humming, and exaggerated yawns. They called it stretching the snake. You try it? It's weird but oddly satisfying. In one corner of the room, a young boy recites an invocation while balancing a smooth stone on his tongue. If it falls, he starts over. He's sweating slightly. You watch him, half hypnotized. Meanwhile, a scroll on the wall lists signs of the untrustworthy mouth. These include sudden dryness during praise, teeth that chatter when asked to speak plainly, a crooked smile with no witness to joy honestly. That last one hits a little too close. There are also remedies, some verbal, some edible. Speak with a pebble under the tongue until you feel its silence. Chew coriander for 7 days to sweeten your accusations. If your tongue burns with guilt, let milk and ink cool it. You wonder how many of these were metaphors, and how many involved actual ink consumption. A passing elder scribe tells you about a pharaoh, his advisor who was rumored to have swallowed scroll fragments, so no one could read his secrets. Not exactly a healthy practice, but undeniably committed to the bit. Words, she says quietly, are dangerous. They carve more than knives. You nod. Then she adds, but also, they heal more than honey. The walls around you begin to feel less like a classroom and more like a sanctuary. A place where people came not only to learn but to unlearn, to soften their speech, to treat their mouths not as weapons or tools, but as sacred gardens. It makes you think of the toothpaste again, the careful balance of cleansing, soothing, and expressing. Because sometimes health wasn't just about gums or enamel, it was about giving the body a better way to speak its truth. You thank the scribes and step back out into the sun, your tongue tasting the dust, your mind carrying a strange sense of calm. You feel your own mouth relax a little, as if it's been holding tension for years, and someone finally gave it permission to unclench. And somewhere in the back of your head, a whisper. Speak sweetly. Or chew mint first. You wander back through the market's lazy chaos, that last line still ringing faintly in your head. Speak sweetly, or chew mint first. It's the kind of advice you imagine would look lovely painted above a kitchen door or whispered through gritted teeth at a family gathering. But now, your attention shifts because you've caught a whiff of something unmistakably medicinal and slightly threatening. Not quite mint, not quite death, definitely burnt. You follow your nose to a small courtyard shaded by woven reeds. Hanging from a beam are bundles of dried herbs, thyme, juniper, bitter aloes. In the center sits an old woman grinding something in a shallow stone bowl with both hands and a deeply focused frown. She doesn't look up. Come to have your mouth scolded, she mutters. You blink. Maybe. She gestures for you to sit. This, you quickly learn, is the village mouth healer. It's not quite a priest, not quite a physician. Somewhere between a grandma, a chemist, and the person who tells you your breath smells weird even when you didn't ask. She spoons some grayish paste from her mortar and dabs it on a strip of linen. Open. You hesitate. What's in that? Charred bread, myrrh, rock salt, dried goose tongue. You laugh nervously. Wait, really? She shrugs. 2 of those are true. You decide not to press the issue and let her gently press the linen into your lower gum line. It stings just a little but also smells like someone lit a very intelligent fire. This'll draw out the heat, she says. Your words have been running hot. You consider this? Either she's psychic or you muttered too much under your breath. Historians still argue whether these community healers were officially recognized. Medical professionals or simply inherited their roles through oral tradition. What's clear is that they had their own recipes, their own clients, and their own very persuasive way of telling you to rinse and spit. She shows you her toolkit: wooden sticks for scraping the tongue, small bronze mirrors, obsidian tweezers, and dozens of tiny clay jars labeled with neat looping symbols. Some are filled with familiar things: mint oil, powdered charcoal, dried lemon peel. Others contain substances better left unnamed. One is simply labeled noisy husband. You don't open that one. She explains how different people require different cures. Fishermen might need salt-rubbed myrrh to counter the wet air. A brewer's daughter gets a sweet vinegar rinse after long hours inhaling yeast. And a gossip? She gets pomegranate rind with oak ash. Clamps the tongue, the healer says, pinching her fingers together. But only if they agree to chew it. Some did. You ask about children? Oh, they're the worst. Eat everything, never rinse. You ever try to get a 6-year-old to gargle mint water before a harvest festival? You'd have better luck with a crocodile. She's not joking. There's a tall clay oven behind her, and beside it a curious arrangement of baked pellets laid out in rows. She invites you to inspect them. They're small, round, and slightly crumbly. Some are dark gray, others almost bone white. Test cakes, she says. I've been trying different blends. Too much vinegar and they burn the tongue. Too little and they taste like regret. You take a cautious nibble of one that smells vaguely like thyme and old sandals. It's better than expected. It's almost refreshing. She grins. That's my sleep chewer. Calms the breath. Helps you stop talking to yourself after dark. You wonder if that might actually be useful. The conversation drifts, and you learn about her apprenticeship. How? She once served in a temple infirmary, preparing incense for throat rituals and tending to high priests with breath like dying camels. Her proudest invention? Paste made from fig sap and clove that was so effective, a local noble tried to patent it by writing his name on every jar. He had 6 teeth left, she adds. None of them good. As you prepare to leave, she presses a small jar into your palm. Side. a pale, powdery mix that smells like mint, basil, and just a hint of burnt toast. For balance, she says. Use it when your mouth gets ahead of your mind, you thank her, genuinely. And as you walk away, the air smells cleaner, somehow crisper. Or maybe your nose is just hopeful. Either way, you feel different. Lighter, calmer, like your mouth has been put in timeout and given a juice box. You keep moving, past crumbling brick walls that lean like they're mid-conversation and down toward the riverbank. The Nile's evening breeze is cool on your face and smells of silt and memory. On its banks, there's a stone bench, half-sunken. It's probably older than half the dynasty's and. A young man sitting on it with a basket of peculiar tools. He's carefully shaping what looks like a curved piece of ivory with a file, the kind of concentration usually reserved for threading needles or sneaking snacks before dinner. Next to him lie rows of small inserts, gold, silver, even obsidian each, carved to resemble human teeth. You found yourself a dental craftsman. I make smiles, he says, flashing his own, which is predictably perfect. These, he explains, aren't just decorative. They're functional. Placement teeth for the fallen, the rotten, and the ritually removed. His clients include soldiers, elders, and high officials whose public image depended as much on their mouth as their sandals. Historians still debate how common these replacements were, whether they were actually worn, or placed ceremonially in mummies to preserve the deceased's wholeness in the afterlife. But either way, it's clear. The Egyptians took teeth seriously enough to engineer new ones. Not many chew with these, he admits, holding up a polished gold molar, but they smile with them. That's enough. You think back to the copper tools, the burnt bread paste, the mint water rituals. It's all part of the same philosophy. Your mouth is your signature. If it breaks, you fix it at all. At least make it look presentable for eternity. He invites you to try carving one. You pick up a small, chalky lump of limestone and begin shaping what vaguely resembles a front tooth. After several minutes of careful sanding and one accidental nose scratch, you present your creation. Not bad, he says diplomatically, then tucks it into a box labeled Hopeful Amateurs. You accept this with grace. As twilight deepens, he opens a scroll tucked beneath his seat. It's not a diagram of the jaw or a list of ingredients, it's poetry. Poems written by clients about their mouths. One praises the silence a missing tooth brought. Another celebrates the return of confidence after a particularly dramatic gold incisor was installed. One very dramatic stanza reads, "My bite restored, I bite not but I beam, oh, I beam." You can't help but chuckle. The idea of dental work inspiring poetry seems a stretch until you realize that for people whose voices carried weight in court, religion, or business, the ability to smile or speak clearly wasn't vanity, it was power. One entry near the end is unsigned but dated nearly 3,000 years ago. It reads, "A tooth lost in war, replaced in peace, now guards my laughter. You stare at it longer than expected." The craftsman closes the scroll and wipes his tools clean with a cloth that smells faintly of lavender. You help him pack up, tucking the box of teeth Hopeful Amateurs and a lid to a leather satchel. Before parting, he hands you a sliver of ivory shaped like a canine. "Not for your mouth," he says. "It's just something to hold between your fingers when words feel heavy." You pocket it gratefully, giving one last glance to the slowly darkening river. You hadn't expected this dental aesthetics as emotional therapy, but then again, nothing about your journey so far has followed the expected route. A nearby heron croaks softly, then flaps skyward, spooked by a passing breeze. You head a craftsman waving from his bench. He's already begun another tooth, his hands guided by centuries of inherited touch. The path ahead curves slightly, lined with smooth stones and the occasional clump of wild mint. You roll the ivory tooth between your fingers and think. Not for the first time that the ancient Egyptians didn't just fix smiles. They understood that sometimes, when the world pressed too hard, you just needed something small to hold. Your feet crunch gently over the gravel path as you move farther inland, away from the water's edge and back into the pulse of daily Egyptian life. The sun has finally dipped below the horizon, and the sky is turning a rich, velvety blue. Lamps begin to flicker to life-small oil flames glowing like polite fireflies. Ahead of you, a courtyard buzzes with low conversation and the occasional laugh. The smell hits you before the sound. Sharp vinegar, fermented honey, and the tang of something that might once have been a turnip. You've stumbled upon what looks suspiciously like a public mouthwash station. "Don't be shy," says an older man in a linen kilt, standing proudly behind a row of clay jars. "Come rinse your regrets." Step forward cautiously. A teenager next to you swishes a mouthful of something that smells like spicy pickles, gargles theatrically, and spits into a sandy basin. "Cleanse the past, welcome the aftertaste," the man intones. Okay, so this is either an ancient hygiene ritual or the world's earliest open mic for liquids. He offers you a shallow bowl, new mix, bit of sycamore sap, helps with storytelling. You raise an eyebrow? Storytelling? "Oh yes," he says with conviction. "A fresh tongue tells better tales, dry mouths lie. You want truth? Rinse. You give it a try." The mixture is sweet at first, then floral, then distinctly peppery. You splutter just slightly. The teenager gives you a thumbs up. This was no ordinary swish and spit. This was oral theater. The man introduces himself as a Nedyatan informal rinsing master. His family has kept the tradition for generations. "We don't clean the teeth," he clarifies. "We wake the tongue." Sounds like something that should be carved above a stage, or maybe embroidered onto a very enthusiastic hand towel. Historians still argue whether such public rinsing rituals were purely practical or had spiritual connotations. Some inscriptions suggest rinsing before prayers, others before love poems. You get the sense that in ancient Egypt, you didn't just brush to avoid cavities, you brushed because your words mattered. You're invited to try another flavor. This time, it's pomegranate rind steeped in date vinegar and clove. It tastes like autumn, having a very polite argument. Nearby, two older women debate which rinse works best for calming nerves before a big speech. One swears by lotus water. The other prefers raw garlic and salt. You don't ask how that's working out for her socially. There's a board nailed to the wall, a crude ranking system, tallying the most popular concoctions of the week. Mint and myrrh is holding strong at the top. Garlic nectar splash trails near the bottom, for reasons that require no explanation. And then you spot it. Burnt bread tonic, coming soon. There it is. Apparently, it's been making rounds through upper temple circles, a new paste with a cult following among scribes and high priests who spend all day reciting, chanting, and arguing about grain storage. Some say it sharpens the tongue. Others claim it actually makes your breath smell like roasted almonds, which sounds deeply suspicious but oddly charming. You ask the rinsing master what he thinks. He nods thoughtfully. Burnt bread is powerful. A humble beginning. Fire purifies, but it also flavors. It's like apologizing with toast. You chew on that, metaphorically. Before leaving, you're handed a small waxed pouch. Side, dried lemon peel, a sliver of frankincense, and a note that reads, "For use before awkward conversations." You pocket it without question. You never know when a little oral diplomacy might be required. Back on the road, the air has changed. It's cooler now, quieter. You pass a few homes where people sit outside, chatting softly, chewing stalks of something fibrous and green. One woman catches your eye and holds up the stalk licorice root, known for cleansing breath and sweetening the palate. She gestures for you to try. It's mild and earthy, almost woody. It's surprisingly satisfying to chew. Apparently, this was a common nighttime habit. Something to gently soothe the senses before sleep. Forget warm milk instant. Egyptians ended their day by chewing plants that made their mouths feel less like tombs and more like temples. You settle on a low wall, legs stretched, licorice root in hand. There's something timeless about the act of tending to your mouth after a long day of rinsing, chewing, exhaling. And for a brief moment, in the fading light, you feel like part of that continuum. Just another sleepy human trying to end the day with a slightly better taste in your mouth than you started with. You rise from your seat on the wall, stretching gently. The licorice root still lingers in your mouth, sweet and mellow. Night has truly settled now, pressing softly against your skin like a warm linen blanket. Lanterns burn low in clay sconces. Somewhere nearby, someone is playing a sleepy tune on a reed flute, the melody winding through the night like a curious cat. Ahead of you is a broad doorway flanked by faded columns. On either side, carved hieroglyphs speak of cleanliness, wisdom, and surprisingly, molars. This, you realize, is a training house for healers, somewhere between a temple and a med school. You enter cautiously. The cool air smells of oil, parchment, and faintly of cinnamon. Inside, men and women in pale robes move about quietly. Some read scrolls, others tend to wax jaw models or apply salves to wooden effigies. A tutor with stern eyebrows is pointing at a diagram of the human mouth, using a reed pen like a wand. He spots you, you're late, he says, gesturing to a nearby bench. You don't argue. When a man with eyebrows like that gives an order, you obey. Soon, you're listening to a lecture on oral decay. It's oddly poetic. When the tooth weeps, he intones, the body listens. Pain in the mouth is a trumpet in the skull. Well, that's one way to make dental hygiene sound like a musical uprising. The tutor explains that Egyptian medical training involved more than herbs and chants. It was deeply anatomical. Though mummification made internal organs more accessible to study, the mouth remained one of the few places they treated during life with real precision. Toothaches were described in detail on medical papyri, including the Ebers and Edwin Smith textu of history's oldest known medical scrolls. Historians still argue, he says, tapping the scroll for emphasis, whether our treatments were truly effective or just better than nothing. Then he picks up a tool you recognize, the copper hook, the same one from earlier. It's not a weapon. It's a probe used to extract decay, clean out infected pulp, or apply herbal paste into cavities. Sometimes they'd even pack wounds with a mixture of crushed carob and honey. Apparently, it not only tasted decent, but also discouraged infection. You try not to think about having someone poke around your molars with something that looks like it could unlock a tomb. The tutor gestures toward a row of students practicing on wooden jaw models. Want to try? He asks. You nod, picking up a wax jaw. It's more delicate than expected. One molar has been dyed black to simulate decay. Yeah. You reach for the copper hook with the reverence of a game show contestant selecting a lucky number. Steady hands, slow breath. You begin to clean around the tooth. Gentle, says a student beside you. Pretend it's the Pharaohs. You glance at her. You've practiced on Pharaohs. She smirks. Not yet, but they're next in line. The room bursts into polite laughter. Even the tutor cracks a smile barely. A wall nearby holds dozens of tiny vials labeled in careful script. Cinnamon bark for breath, thyme for soreness, resin for wounds, and powdered opal for mystical clarity of expression. Okay, sure, why not? Some believe that the Egyptians considered dental pain not just a physical ailment, but a spiritual imbalance, a sign that words were being spoken poorly or too much truth had been swallowed. It's speculative, of course, but you've seen stranger things tonight. At the back of the hall, there's a quiet corner where a healer is chanting over a clay tablet, dipping their fingers in oil and pressing them gently along a patient's jawline. This isn't surgery, this is ritual. You ask the tutor about it. Ah, he says, jaw blessings, mostly for children or singers. It calms the spirit in the gums. You file that one away under spiritual dentistry, a category that now inexplicably exists in your mind. As your lesson wraps up, the tutor thanks you for observing quietly and not breaking anything. You hand him back the wax jaw with all teeth intact, and he nods approvingly. Before you leave, a student offers you a small scroll. It contains a list of common dental afflictions and some very creative remedies. One entry reads, if the teeth chatter without cause, rub them with warm beer and whisper apologies. Another, for gums like fire, chew willow bark while thinking of cold rivers. And finally, when the mouth refuses to close, let it speak until silence follows. You roll the scroll gently and tuck it into your belt, a memento of the evening's education. Outside, the music is quieter now, and the Nile reflects the moon like it's trying to remember her name. You've walked among craftsmen, healers, rinsers, poets, and would-be philosophers of Plaque somehow. They've all treated the mouth not just as a body part, but as a gateway. To stories, to emotion, to memory. And it makes sense. After all, what is more human than the impulse to clean something, just so it can smile again? By now, the streets have grown almost completely quiet. Last vendors are packing up their stalls, stacking dried herbs and leftover lentils under thick cloths to protect against the desert dew. You pass by a small child snoring softly on a papyrus mat, one arm curled around a wooden hippo toy. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks once, half-heartedly, then thinks better of it. You've nearly made a full circle through this slumbering settlement, but there's still one place left to visit before calling it a night, a place you might not have noticed, if not for the tiny flame flickering stubbornly outside a narrow doorway carved directly into the rock. A wooden sign, unevenly etched, reads, pastemakers and alchemists. Night shift. Well, that seems promising. You duck inside, and immediately you're hit by the pungent blend of scorched barley, ash, and honey. It's an olfactory experience best described as breakfast during a small fire, but comforting in a weird way. An elderly woman in a faded blue tunic peers at you over a bubbling clay pot. She's stirring slowly with what looks like a polished stick of cinnamon. A young apprentice sits nearby, carefully grinding blackened bread crust into a fine powder using a flat stone. "You here to buy or spy?" the old woman asks, not unkindly. "Bit of both," you reply. She shrugs. "Fair?" You settle into a low stool. The fire crackles softly. The apprentice adds a pinch of dried mint to the powdered crust, then leans over and whispers conspiratorially. "This is batch 23. Fewer ants this time." "Good," the old woman says, still stirring. "One day we'll get it just wrong enough to be perfect." Welcome to the experimental lab of ancient oral care. Here, innovation doesn't wear a lab coat, it wears soot. The paste they're making is said to do it all. Freshen the breath, clean the gums, even chase the bad spirits from beneath the tongue. You try not to imagine what that spirit looks like. The base is simple enough: burnt bread, ground until fine, mixed with vinegar, honey, and aromatic herbs. But the variations are endless. Some formulas include crushed iris petals for politeness. Others use goose fat to help the paste stick to stubborn molars. One early version, the apprentice confides, turned bright green overnight and had to be buried with honors. "Historians still argue," the old woman mutters, "whether we were making medicine or just really determined porridge." You watch as she adds a final pinch of powdered carob. "For sweetness," she says. Nobody brushes if it tastes like sand. The paste is stored in tiny ceramic jars, some with lids shaped like tiny teeth. Others are labeled with poetic names. Morning breath of raw, dustbane, smile like a scribe, and your personal favorite, regret mint. There's a playful energy to the place, like someone accidentally started a dental cult and decided to just run with it. On one wall hangs a painted chart of famous mouths pharaohs, scribes, dancers all, supposedly loyal users of the paste. One even has a speech bubble painted beside him. "It burns, but I feel smarter." You chuckle, and the apprentice grins. "Marketing," he says proudly. The old woman hands you a small applicator stick carved from olive wood, smooth at one end, bristled at the other. You dip it into the newest paste batch and give it a tentative swipe across your front teeth. Taste earthy, smoky, a little like campfire, a little like dessert. Not bad, really. Definitely better than garlic salt lotus stew. She watches you for a moment, then says softly, "What we put in the mouth matters. It shapes what comes out." You nod, mouth full of toothpaste, trying not to drool wisdom. Before you leave, they gift you a jar. It's labeled "First Smile of the Night," a bedtime paste apparently. It's meant to settle the tongue and unclench tomorrow's arguments. You thank them and step back into the night, paste jar warm in your hand from the firelight. As you walk, the cool air brushes gently against your face. The rooftops are quiet now, the Nile a sleepy ribbon in the dark. You pass by doorways where couples whisper, mothers hum to fussy toddlers. Old men watch the stars like they're reading a newspaper only they can see. You find yourself smiling without meaning to. Somewhere deep in the past, someone had a toothache. And instead of giving up, they ground up a piece of toast and made the world's first toothpaste. Not glamorous, not flashy, just quietly brilliant. Because even in ancient times, people cared about what they said. And they knew that sometimes before you speak, before you love, teach, chant, argue, sing, you have to clean the gate. You have to care for the mouth, because it's where stories begin. And in Egypt, stories are everything. You walk slowly now, each footstep quiet against the packed earth. The streets are all but empty, the city tucked under a blanket of soft wind and shifting shadows. The smell of baking dust, incense, and ancient secrets hangs in the air like a lullaby. Somewhere, a woman laughs softly in her sleep, and it echoes off stone like a distant drum. You pass familiar places now. There's the public fountain where children splashed this morning, now drained and glinting like a silver scar under the moonlight. The bronze cat from earlier still guards its ledge, staring down a piece of wind-blown papyrus like it holds the meaning of life. You pause at the edge of a broad plaza where the temple gates rise, not in challenge, but in quiet welcome. Moonlight floods the stone courtyard, picking out the edges of carved relief stories upon stories etched into every surface. This is the final stop, a sacred archive of sorts, not just for kings and gods, but for everyday tools, techniques, and teeth. You duck through a narrow doorway, and the scent inside is striking. Myrrh, old parchment, and beeswax. You've stepped into a library of stone shelves, each cubbyhole holding a clay tablet or painted scroll. Two elderly scribes nod at you as they sort documents by topic. One scroll is titled Pains of the Mouth as felt by bakers, another of kissing and its dangers. You drift toward the back, where an open scroll lies pinned under smooth stones. It's not a manual or even a medical list, it's a letter. From a father to his son, he writes. When I was your age, we used charcoal and vinegar, made our teeth black as storm clouds, but no one dared call us foul. We bit like crocodiles. We smiled like sunrise. Brush every day, little one, and let no priest or poet outshine your breath. It's dated over 3,000 years ago. You sit for a moment, hands folded, eyes tracing the gentle curve of each hieratic line. There's something powerful about this simplicity here. This isn't just medical advice, it's legacy, passed down through soot and mint and memory. Historians still argue, whispers one of the scribes behind you, whether letters like these were meant to be practical or simply to show affection. You think it's both? You rise slowly and thank the scribe. He hands you a small parchment with a hand-drawn sketch, a toothbrush of sorts, shaped like a flower stalk with bristles made from frayed reed. Beneath it, in elegant script, are the words, "In the beginning, we cleaned not for health, but for dignity." Outside, the night has grown deeper, stretching thin across the sky. You head toward the edge of the city, where the first rays of pre-dawn begin to dilute the darkness. The stars, those ancient gossiping pinpricks, are starting to yawn. The Nile is still, reflecting your footsteps like a mirror with secrets. You walk along the bank, the water murmuring beside you in a voice too old to translate. With every step, you feel lighter. The weight of time, the slow layering of ritual, invention, and burnt bread has somehow made the world feel more gentle. This city, this civilization, knew something we often forget. Caring for small things, mouths, teeth, breaths, not a minor task. It's a ceremony, preparation, signal that we are ready to speak, to sing, to kiss, to be heard. And tonight, you have walked among those who master that ceremony with soot and clay and stubborn curiosity. Your bed waits nearby cool linen, a soft cushion stuffed with rushes, and maybe even a lullaby drifting in through a crack in the window. As you lie down, the last words of that old scroll echo softly, "Let no poet outshine your breath." And really, what more can you ask for now? Long and quiet, as if the world itself has curled up beside you to rest. The Nile hums a soft rhythm in the distance. You're no longer walking, just floating, held in that dreamy in-between place where time moves like honey and thoughts drift like feathers. Your muscles are heavy now, warm and slow. Your breath falls into an easy pattern, just like the gentle pulse of this ancient land. You've walked dusty streets, learned the secrets of burnt bread and blossom-scented pastes, and stood beside those who turned hygiene into something sacred. And somehow, through all the odd little rituals, the cinnamon sticks and copper hooks, the mint leaves and honey jars, you found comfort in the quiet persistence of care. Because even thousands of years ago, someone stood in a flickering doorway and whispered to their child, "Brush gently." Even then, there was gentleness in the grit. And now, so many centuries later, you get to carry that memory, tucked like a scroll in the pocket of your dreams. Let your body soften. Let your thoughts quiet. The stars overhead are fading into the soft blue of coming dawn. But you don't need to rise yet. You're wrapped in something older than alarm clocks, deeper than sunrise. Just sleep now. Let the past keep watch.